Peace and blessings, Mishpachah. We are going to get into it tonight. Yes, once again, Cain. Is his error genetic? And the answer is yes or no. The answer may very well surprise you. Well, you know, as we always do, we always pray and we always just get into an atmosphere of praise and worship, and we honor our Elohim and we pray unto him. So let's do that right now. Baruch atah Yahweh Elohim, Baruch atah. Ki atah hakol bishbili Yahweh, atah hakol bishbilano anachnu ha'enoshim shalabrit shelach Yahweh. Baruch atah. Baruch atah bevoker, Baruch atah belayla, Baruch atah kol hayom Yahweh. Baruch atah Yahweh, atah el rochum. Enachnu v'kashim she'ata slikha lanu Yahweh, gam raham lanu Yahweh. Ki atah el chesed. Baruch atah Yahweh, Baruch atah. Baruch atah Yahweh. Baruch atah bevoker, Baruch atah be'er, Baruch atah kol hayom, Baruch atah Yah, Baruch atah Yah. Baruch atah. Baruch atah Yahweh Elohai, Baruch atah b'shamayim, Baruch atah b'haaretz. Enachnu ha'enoshim shel habrit shelech Yahweh. Baruch atah. Enachnu ha'ovim ocha Yahweh. Blessed are you, O Lord, our God. We thank you, for you are the God of mercy. You are our God of mercy, and we are the people of your covenant. And we ask you to forgive us. Have mercy upon us, for you are the merciful God. You are the God of love and kindness. Hallelujah. And you are blessed all the day long. You are blessed in the morning. You are blessed in the evening. You are blessed at night. You are blessed all the day long. And we thank you, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you. Hallelujah. Blessed are you in the morning, and blessed are you in the evening, blessed are you, blessed are you, blessed are you, God. Blessed are you in the night, in the midnight hour, blessed are you, hallelujah. So blessed are you, ancient of days, most high. Blessed are you. All right, we're going to stop it right there. We've got a lesson to get into, and let's get into our lesson. Let's get into our lesson. Just before we do, I have to just take care of a couple of preliminaries here, just a couple of minor preliminaries. We're going to make sure that everything is, that everything is kosher. Yep. Going to make sure that everything is kosher, kosher, kosher. And we're doing good so far. So far, we are batting 1,000. We are batting 1,000. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Let me do this. I got one more thing to do. Excuse me for looking up and away from you. However, I want to make sure that our stream for Facebook Live is public. It's going to the public. Okay, so hey, we are ready to get into it. We are ready to pick up from where we left off on last night. Now, for those of you that recall where we were last night, now I'm not necessarily going to do a huge recap. I'm not going to do a huge recap. I'm going to invite you to take a look at the videos, and that's kind of why we do them, right? So that and we archive them so that you can go back and so that you can take a look at them. And because last night we did mention a couple of deep things, there were a couple of deep principles that we mentioned, and so we want to make sure that we flow with that and keep moving. But you feel free to go ahead and look at the lives, right? Look at the past lives that we did, right? And let's just take a look and let's just get right into our lesson, because we were really deep into it. And so we're going to pick up right from where we left off, okay? We're going to pick right up where we left off. And one of the scriptures that we went to, we actually went to Genesis 4, and we spent lots of time in Genesis 4, working with verse 7, also working with verse 8. And we were asking the question, we were presenting, and we were asking the question whether or not Cain's error was that was basically, was it genetics, right? Was it genetics? Now, wait a minute. What would bring on a question like that? Why does that seem to be a viable question to ask? Well, one reason is that there is a lot of theory and supposition which says that Cain was of the Nephilim, or he was of demon seed. And so we wanted to see if that was so by means of the Tanakh. Okay, so we're looking in the word of our Elohim, we're looking in the Tanakh, and we were trying to ascertain whether or not that's true. Is Cain demon seed or not? And we've determined on yesterday, we have proven by means of the Tanakh that he was not demon seed. Now, listen, I understand what people are saying, the children of Cain and the spirit of Cain. Now, let me do something here that I did not do yesterday, because if you listen to yesterday's program, which is Cain Part 2, this is Cain Part 3, you may get the feeling that I'm trying to snuggle up to Cain, or that I'm trying to excuse Cain. I'm not trying to excuse Cain, not at all. I don't let Cain off the hook, not for a moment, not for a second, because there are some things about Cain that just don't wash when it comes to him having the position that he did and being the next in line for a level of anointing that would carry the family forward. And let's just kind of break in right there. Now, let me do this, and let's go into some of our scriptures, even some of the scriptures that we were dealing with when it comes to Cain. Now, we talked about the sacrifice of Cain, right? But I want you to look at this, and I want you to understand here that when Chava had Cain, she was hopeful, right? She was hopeful when she had Cain because there was a promise that was underway. And in fact, let me do this. Let's go into these scriptures. I'm going to step away from my presentation right now for just a few moments. And I want to come right here. We're going to come right here to Bereshit, or Genesis 4 and 1, and let's tap into this once again, and let's hit this from a slightly different angle, and let's talk about this. Now, it reads, and Adam knew intimately, sexually, physically, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived. That's how women conceive, right? And she bore unto him Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from Yah. That's what she said. Okay. Now, some have said, well, no. You see, it's somewhere like in the Dead Sea Scrolls that Eve had a baby by Satan or by one of the fallen angels. Well, I challenge you to find that and to present it, give it to me, right? I'd be happy to take a look at it. But if we were to take a look here, and we see that this is the Tetragrammaton, this is not referencing any of the B'nai Elohim. This is referencing Yah himself. Okay. So she said, I've gotten me a man. And notice she did not say, I got a demon, or I got a, demon seed. No, this is an ish. This is a man. And she said, I got this man from Yah. Okay. I got this man from Yah. And so she was thankful that Yah gave her Cain. Now, let's do this, because this is also something that I did not do before. And looking at Cain, right, I just want to point something out to you. Now, we know that Cain is the eldest son. Cain is the eldest son, just as we see. In fact, I want to make this bigger for you so that you can see the definition. I want you to see the definition here, okay? So when we see Cain, Cain here is, he is one. Now, listen. As far as Hava was concerned, she was expecting someone to come in her lineage, if you will, that was going to deal with the seed of the serpent. Now, wait a minute. Let's back up here, because now I want to give you some context for this. I want to give you some context, because when we go all the way back, even unto verse number 15, and this is a very popular verse of scripture for those that have the two race theory, okay? And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So there was a battle that was expected, okay? Now, this battle was of course, it was going to be victorious for those of us who are, we might consider to be humankind, or we're imagers. If you follow Dr. Michael Heiser, or who I call Dr. High, if you notice here, there is a somewhat of a promise here, right? And I will put enmity between you and between the woman, and between your seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So, long story short, people have looked at this and they said, see, so the serpent has seed. But wait a minute. When a serpent has offspring, which they do, isn't that the seed? I mean, aren't there other serpents today because of the serpents that were here before, right? So here's my point. There is an expected confrontation, an expected battle. And so when Hava had Cain, she was expecting that Cain was going to be the one that was promised, and Cain was going to be the one to do the battle. And so there were expectations concerning Cain, right? There were expectations concerning him. The definition, it's actually Cain, instead of Cain. The English Americanized version is Cain, but it is actually Cain, almost like the pepper, right? He's the eldest son of Adam and Eve, right? And when you look at his name, it comes from to acquire, kana, right? Kana. In modern Hebrew, kana is to buy, but basically it's to acquire, to obtain, right? It is also the connotation of the name in Hebrew also connects to that deals with heroes. Those are, in fact, let me just let me make this bigger so that you can see this. I want you to see that, of course, I'm not making this up. I just want you to see it, okay? Hopefully that's bigger. That's big enough for you to see it, okay? So it means acquire, but in fact, right, it is eponymous with heroes, as heroes according to, and they give you all these references, but there is a connotation with Cain actually alluding to something heroic, okay? Something heroic. Hava was expecting Cain to be the one that was going to strike the head of the serpent, okay? And to be against all of his seed, or against all other serpents, all right? So long story short, our Elohim cursed the serpent, right? So that it should basically it should slither on the ground, and so that's where the heel of men would walk. And so it is destined then that there's going to come one to strike the head of the serpent. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, our Messiah did that, Jesus did that. And on that point, let me just throw this in here because, you know, I'm sorry, but it doesn't make sense. So wait a minute. What do you mean it doesn't make sense? Okay, so Christians say that Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, that he is the Messiah and that he did do this, that he made an open show of the devil, right? And he basically conquered him, right? And he took away his captives. He conquered him, right? He defeated him. He made an open show of him, right? My question is this: if that's true, and Christianity is the main one that says this, but if that is true, then why are Christians still putting on the whole armor of God to fight the devil? If Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, fought the devil, and if his work on the cross destroyed the devil, it says in Hebrews that he came that he might destroy the devil. So, wait a minute. If he's destroyed and he made an open show of him, then why are Christians yet putting on the whole armor of God and doing spiritual warfare and battling and fighting if it's all done? And if he was the Messiah that was going to bruise the serpent's head. If that was so, then why are Christians still fighting? Right? I mean, we would look crazy. I mean, listen, if someone was dressed in a Confederate uniform and still talking about fighting them Yankees and got a sword out, we'd be like, man, Civil War is over, buddy. The Civil War is over. That war was done a long time ago. Or someone grabs a gun and it's like, I'm going back over there to Korea. I'm going back over there to Korea because I'm a fight. Oh, we'd say, buddy, the war is over. Supposedly for Christianity, the war against this personified being called Satan, it's supposed to be over. And if it's over, then again, I ask, why are Christians dressing up in the whole armor of God? It does not make sense. Once again, Christianity has doubled upon itself, and one of its explanations and one of its tenets and beliefs has shot itself in the foot, has shot Christianity in the foot. Okay, it does not work. But Hava was expecting Cain to be the promised one, and so therefore there were things that she expected of Cain. So you can imagine how heartbroken she was, and you can imagine how heartbroken Adam was when all of this transpired. But wait, I'm getting to a point. I'm getting to the point that I do not let Cain off the hook because Cain had some serious issues. Now, I want you to notice here, and as we take a look at this once again, we're looking at verse number 7, right? In verse number 7, he has an opportunity to change things, right? Because again, sin is a choice. It is not this personified master of humanity as the Apostle Paul makes it out to be, but sin is simply a choice. Our Elohim has a conversation with Cain and says, look, buddy, make the right choice, because again, and I'm going to point this out, even though I don't have to, he says that you basically have power over sin and you are ruling over sin, okay? Now, Christian commentators like to take the latter part of verse 7, 7b, where it says, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. They kind of look over that and they surmise and say, well, that must be Abel. No, it's not Abel, okay? It is not Abel for reasons that I already discussed, but I'll also say it again. He already had authority over Abel. He was the oldest brother. He already had rank over Abel. So that's not who he needed to conquer, right? But Christians look at this clause even in the first part of verse 7, and where it says, if you do well, right? If you do well, won't you be accepted? And this is where they kind of mix it up a little bit, and where it says, and if you do not well, sin lieth at the door. And where it says sin lies at the door, they say that, well, see, this is a sin offering. The commentaries will interject in there that this is a sin offering that's laying at the door, as if Cain had a bunch of slain sheep laying by the door, just waiting to sin, waiting to go take one of these. No. No. It is not talking about, in the Hebrew, it is not talking about a korban hatas. It is not talking about an offering for sin. It is not talking about that. It's saying that sin itself is at the door, and it is crouching like a beast, and it's waiting for you to make the wrong choice. It wants you bad. But he says, Yahweh or Elohim says, but you shall rule over him. You make the right choice, Cain, you're going to rule over sin. You're going to rule over sin, Cain. And I must add, I must point out once again, this puts a hole in the head of original sin. There is no original sin. This would not be the case had, Elohim had this conversation with Cain. It wouldn't have gone like this if there was original sin. Okay? Now, we're gonna really make some distinctions here tonight, and we're gonna actually talk about some things that relate to what we might call the phenomenon of sin, okay, or the potential to sin. But original sin itself is a fallacy. It is a Christian invention. It is a fallacy. Okay, so then let's take a look at it. Because as we look at verse number 8, and so I'm not excusing Cain. That's my point. So as we look at verse number 8, and Cain talked with his brother, right? And this is where we left off last night. And it came to pass that when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and he slew him. Verse number 9 is where Cain begins to show himself, verses 9 and 10. And notice what it reads. And Yah said unto Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I don't know, lying through his teeth to the Most High. Am I my brother's keeper? You see, in this, I understand he just wanted to get away with it, right? But here's my issue. I'm not excusing Cain. I'm not making light of Cain's issue. But what I am doing is I'm looking at Cain as a human being, which is what we should do, rather than heaping upon him all of these conspiracy theories and myths, okay? We should definitely look at Cain as a human being, because then we can learn something about our own walk with our Elohim. So our Elohim actually said to Cain, he wanted to know, where's Abel? He said, I don't know. Now, Cain shows no remorse. And it only gets worse. Cain doesn't say, forgive me, Yah, for I have sinned against my mother. Forgive me, Yah, for I've sinned against my father. Forgive me, Yah, for I've sinned against my brother, my whole family. Forgive me. Give me another chance. Be like David. Oh, listen, here I am. I'm at the altar, right? And be of a contrite heart and a broken spirit. Cain was none of that. Cain wasn't having it. He did not say, I'm sorry once. There's no sign of remorse. There is no sign of guilt. There's no sign of any such thing. And I believe that this is related to the fact that Cain was in a psycho-spiritual battle that he himself could not handle, which is why our Elohim actually had to have a conversation with him in the first place. Okay? This is why he had to have a conversation with him in the first place, because now, if you notice, he did the same thing, as I pointed out last night. He did the same thing with Adam. He came to Adam in the 2nd chapter of Bereshit, and he said, it's not good for him to be alone. This guy is having a problem with the fact that he is alone, right? And we mentioned some of the possible happenings that led to him being alone, but we're going to see, I kind of want to go back there again, but however, let me just make this point, and then maybe I will go back there again. But our Elohim had to deal with Adam because Adam was affected, and I surmise that he may not have been able to carry out his destiny had not our Elohim have ministered to him, dealt with him, and given him what he needed, okay? So then Cain had a destiny. And I'm sure that our Elohim knew that Cain would not be able to fulfill his destiny, right? So he came to him and had a conversation with him. Now, I bring up this point again, that our Elohim, he's long-suffering, and a lot of times we go through things psycho-spiritually, and we go through them, and it seems like I've got this emotional issue, it seems like I'm by myself. I've got this spiritual issue, seems like I'm by myself. And I make this point again that our Elohim gave us to be the rulers, those that have dominion over all the works of his hands, which includes us, because we are the works of his hands, which includes us and the breath that he blew within us. We are to maintain that, right? Just as Adam had to maintain the garden, we must maintain the inspiration of the breath on the inside of us. That's why we worship. That's why we read. That's why we meditate. That's why we study. That's why we still ourselves away. That's why we don't let ourselves get too deeply bogged down and shackled with stress. That's why we do it, because we're maintaining the breath that's on the inside of us, which is the breath of our Elohim. It's the spirit of our Elohim, okay? And so that's why we do it, because we have a mandate to rule over these things and to be the stewards over these things. And so that's what we do. But many people, they seek only to rule that which is physical. You know, I want another car. I want another bank account. I want to be rich. I want this. I want that. And we don't take inventory of what's going on the inside of us. And I'm talking about Hebrews. I'm talking about sisters. I'm talking about our ox. I'm talking about, listen, the whole Hebrew family. We've got to get ourselves right first, and we've got to do it from the inside out. We've got to take dominion from the inside out and rule from the inside out and be victorious from the inside out. We must be masters from the inside out. That is what we must do. And so Cain was failing by the numbers here, because he couldn't keep himself together psychologically, nor could he keep himself together spiritually. He was consumed with the fact, and he was heartbroken. Let me say it again. He was heartbroken with the fact that Yah did not accept his offering. Yah did not accept his offering. He took it personal, and so now he has an issue, and he's heartbroken over the thing, and he has a huge problem. And it led him into a place of bitterness. It led him into a place of anger, and we pointed out on yesterday that there was a mixture of emotions going on the inside of Cain. One was that of anger. One was that of anger, being very vengeful and wrathful and angry, wanting to lash out, and the other one was that of sorrow, okay, because his countenance had fallen, right? And again, we discussed that the physiognomy of an individual when they are angry or when they're sad, it's different being angry and it's different being sad, right? Both of those are negative emotions, but they are different within themselves, okay? But Cain had both of those things going on, and our Elohim addressed that. Our Elohim addressed that in one of the earlier verses, okay? He addressed that in verse number 7. And so as we take a look here and we keep moving with this, we mentioned a number of different things about Cain, but I want you to notice something here about Cain. And see, this is another reason why I don't take him off the hook. Because when he was sentenced to be a vagabond, right? And all Cain was concerned about was, well, when someone finds me, they're gonna kill me. He was not concerned about what he did to his mother, what he did to his family, what he did to his brother, what he did to his father, letting his father down, letting his mother. None of that was in his vocabulary in that moment. He like, look, you know, hey, it is what it is, right? I did it. No remorse, not even a mention of it. Now, I for those of you that are just joining us, let's even start here, because I asked a question, and of course I answered it last night. But the question was, if it's true that our Elohim is the same, Malachi 3 and 6, I am Yah, and I change not, therefore ye sons of Jacob, you are not consumed. If that is so, right, and he always has hated murder, and he always has held a spiritual law, if you will, that says that if you kill, you must be killed. If that law is eternal, meaning that it not only goes forward into eternity, but it also goes backwards into eternity past. If it is eternal, why then did not our Elohim, why did he not sentence Cain? Why did he protect Cain rather than sentencing him to death? It would seem as if, when you take a look at the law, it would seem as if capital punishment would have been in order. it would seem that it would have been in order, especially if the narrative is as we have understood it to be, that yeah, Cain was, premeditating all this, and he was sulking and mad over there, and he lured his brother out to the field. You know how some people tell the story? He lured his brother out there into the field, and then he killed him. Well, again, I point out that in the book of Jubilees, there was an argument. In fact, let me see if I can get that, if I can. There was an argument where Cain and Abel were actually, that they had a major disagreement between themselves, and their disagreement was that man, Cain, who had sheep. I'm sorry, Abel, who had sheep, was allowing his sheep to eat the very ground that Cain was, the ground that supposedly belonged to Cain. And so they were fighting about that. And then Abel had a problem with Cain because Cain was wearing some of the wool from his sheep without recompensing him what he should. Maybe he owed him some groceries. I don't know. But however, in the book of Jubilees, they were both fighting, okay? They were fighting. Now, it seems as if they both had a disagreement with each other. And let me do this. Let me find this. Excuse me for looking up and away from you. Okay, let me find it. And I'm going to find the place where they are actually fighting, and where they have something going on between them. Let's do this. I believe it to be also the 4th chapter in Jubilees. Okay, let me go here and let me scroll into it. Let me find it. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to find it. Let's see. Okay, I don't want to waste time. I can't find it. Okay. Nonetheless, let's just keep moving because we got a lot to get into on tonight. So taking a look then at the situation, it would seem as if they did fight. And when they fought, Cain got the upper hand and he killed his brother. Now, it seems as if it might be that they were fighting and Cain killed him, even though it was wrong, it wasn't kosher, or it was self-defense. Do not know. However, Cain ends up being the first murderer, and our Elohim does not sentence him to death. Rather, he punishes him by making him to be a vagabond. Okay? And I pointed out on yesterday that this was somewhat of the same motif that we find in those who kill an individual unintentionally and then are allowed to flee into, they're allowed to flee into a city of refuge, right? A refuge city. And so, hey, it fits that motif. When you take a look at it, it fits. Otherwise, our Elohim would have been obligated to sentence Cain to death, right? Would have been obligated to sentence him to death. So, long story short, we left off there on last night, and we were talking about some things. And so what we're getting at and getting to is whether or not Cain's error, because Cain is definitely in error. And that's what I'm pointing out here. Cain is definitely in error. Cain has an issue. And I pointed out Cain's physical, his possible pathology in this particular moment. He was heartbroken because his sacrifice was not accepted by Yah. He took it personally. And it would seem as if, now it can be argued that if you notice, Cain was not upset with Yah, right? Cain was not upset with Yah. Now, if he felt as if Yah had wronged him, if he felt as if Yah had done him wrong, then you would think that he'd be angry at Yah. So it seems like either he knew that his offering was not up to snuff, or he began to be jealous of his brother. Okay, now that is a possibility as well. Now, one thing I want to point out too is that in this clause here, let me go back up, and then we'll start here and we'll move forward. In this verse where it says, and Cain talked with Abel, his brother, right? And it came to pass. Okay, it came to pass. That is suggestive of there being a length of time that passed and that Cain was still dealing with all of these issues that we mentioned on yesterday, right? He still has emotional problems. He still has an issue, right? It's eating him up on the inside. He's taking it personal. He's thinking less of himself, all of this, whatever. And so then now it's gotten the best of him, right? Our Elohim came to him, tried to talk to him, and now the deal is about to go down because Cain has not gotten a hold of himself. And he rose up and he killed his brother, okay? He rose up and he killed his brother. And after that, there was absolutely no remorse whatsoever. He never says, I'm sorry. He never says, oh, woe is me. How could I have done that? He never says any of that, right? All he is concerned about himself, what's going to happen to him. When someone finds me, they're going to kill me, right? And so we're asking the question, is this error of Cain, is it that he is, was it genetic? Because, we asked before, we asked if he was demon seed or was he just a person with issues, right? He definitely had issues. And we've also proven that he is not demon seed. So wait a minute. So let's get into this. Because in Matthew 23, let me go there. There's some very interesting verbiage in relationship to a conversation that, or not a conversation, but statements that Yeshua ben Yosef has with the Pharisees. And we're going to begin at verse number 29. Now let me just paraphrase this by saying, from the beginning of the chapter all the way through till we get to verse number 29, Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, he is tearing into them. He's tearing into the Pharisees. He's tearing into them left and right. And he has a huge issue with them, right? He begins by saying, you know what? Yeah, they're sitting in Moses' seat, right? They're your teachers. They're your lawgivers. However, you got to watch them. And then he just starts from there. He starts from there and he just lays into them, right? He lays into them. Now, let me also point this out. Because in Matthew 23:9, we read this verse of scripture here that says, and call no man your father upon earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven, right? Now, many of us, we've looked at that, and for years, we're like, hey, okay, don't call anyone your father, right? So it made us feel better about saying daddy, right? However, if you notice, Father is attached to the one in heaven. So then I ask you this question. Why then does Catholicism insist upon their officiate being called a father? Father so-and-so, Father so-and-so. When supposedly it is against the New Testament, the Christian scriptures, for them to call any man their father. The reason is, wait for it, the reason is that this is another inference of substitution. And it relates to the Pope being the vicar of God. The father images relate to the Father in heaven. So when you call a father, a priest, a father in the Catholic Church, what you're doing is you're saying, well, this father is connected to and representative of the Father that's in heaven. So therefore, you look at that priest as if he's God. And oh, by the way, the priests are supposedly infallible, like our Elohim. So this is put in here so that individuals will understand that, there's only one that's your father. But then you go to the Catholic Church and you're calling those men father. It is a construct that is set to take the place, for men to take the place of our Elohim, and to do so by means of the doctrines of the Catholic Church. That is what is happening here. But let's go on, because that's not our lesson for tonight. If we go down to verse number 29, Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, he begins to tear into the Pharisees. Okay? Now, this is all one big long polemic. Okay? This is all one big long polemic here. So let's take a look, verse number 29. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres or the graves of the righteous. Verse number 30. And say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Verse number 31, wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that you are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. Now here we go. Verse number 33, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city. That listen, verse number 35, that upon you may come all the righteous blood that was shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Berechias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. Did you catch all that? Because, okay, let's just unpack this here and see how it relates to this issue with Cain. In verse number 35, it reads, and in fact, let me even point to verse number 34 first. Because notice what it says in verse number 34. Okay, wherefore, behold, I send you prophets, not I have sent, but I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you shall in the future, you're going to kill, and you are going to crucify. And some of them, you in the future are going to scourge them in your synagogues, and you're going to persecute them from city to city. These are all things that were supposed to happen in the future. Understand the context. These are things that were supposed to happen in the future, okay? And then verse number 35, notice what it reads, that the reason why it's going to happen in the future and the reason why these things are going to happen is so that upon you will come all of the righteous blood that was shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Berechias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. All of the sins of righteous murder of the innocents, all of the sins are somehow, according to this particular writer here, they're being laid upon Israel. Okay? This is highly polemical, because what this is saying is all of you Jews are guilty. All of you are guilty of murder, right? And I want you to notice something here. Why doesn't Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, why doesn't he blame Cain? Why doesn't he blame Cain for the murder of Abel? How is it that the present day Jews of his day has to bear the burden of dealing with that sin of Abel being slain, why is that put on their shoulders? Why is that given to them? Okay. All because of something started here where there was there was a sacrifice that was given, and then of course that sacrifice was not accepted. Oh, you mean to tell me that all of that is going to, it's just difficult for me to fathom that that is actually true. It's difficult for me to fathom that. Why? Because when you take a look at it, it's saying that all of their blood is going to be put upon you. Every righteous person on the planet, that's what it's saying, every righteous person on the planet that has been killed, all of that blood is going to be upon you. I mean, talk about scapegoating, right? But let's do this, because there is no way that Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, there is no way that he said this. What do you mean there's no way that he said this? Okay? There is no way that he said this because Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, he said, hey, if you want eternal life, you keep the commandments. So in the commandments, in the Ketuvim, in the Nevi'im, in the Torah, this is what is written. Ezekiel 18 and 20, the soul that sins, it shall not die. The Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father. Neither shall the Father bear the iniquity of the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. They don't share, right? And the beginning of this is that, even this passage, the beginning of this passage is that, hey, the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. And we're going to come back to that concept. But long story short, there is no way that Yeshua ben Yosef could have said that upon you, present day Yahudi, upon you is going to be all the righteous blood that was ever shed. And not only that, but hey, you're going to do stuff in the future so that all of that blood comes on you. That is not how our Elohim works. That is not how he works. According to the Tanakh, that is not how he works. Now, let me get into some things here. Because when we take a look at the scriptures and understand what's going on here, Cain, we know that Cain has an issue. But here in Matthew 23, there are a number of things going on here that, I mean, Cain, when you look at the Yahudi, when you look at them, they have a huge issue because now they're going to be blamed for the murder that Cain made, or that Cain did, right? And so many people pick up on this and they say, see, so the modern day Jews, you see, they are serpent seed because, he said, you generational vipers. We need to look at things, and we need to look at the context, and we need to understand what's actually happening here, okay? The Jewish people as a whole are being demonized so that this, once again, is justified racism, and therefore the fulfillment of that is justified genocide. That is what's going on here. If you can demonize a people, then you can justify annihilating them. You can justify taking what they have. You can justify mistreating them because you've already demonized them. And so that is what is taking place here. The entire system of Judaism, and even though this was the beginning of rabbinic Judaism, it had just sunken its teeth into existence, and lo and behold, now it's undergoing these things, it's undergoing these battles. So now here's my issue, that when you look at this is actually, listen, I know that this is written in Matthew. I know it's in Matthew. I know that many people read this and it's in red. That means Jesus said it. And so that means that it's gospel. It is the truth. Why? Because it's read and Jesus said it. Listen, it does not match up with the Tanakh. The children do not bear the punishment for the sins of the fathers. That is not what takes place. However, I said we'd get here, and I think that we're here right now because there is something that does relate to human beings, every human being on the face of the planet. There is something that relates in the area of sin. It relates to every human being on the face of the planet. What am I talking about? Well, let's do this. Let's go here. We're going to go to Exodus 32. And so I want to go here. Okay. Now remember, Moshe was on the mountain with Yah, and he's making atonement for Israel. Stick with me here. Stick with me. He's making atonement for Israel, and when he tries to make atonement for Israel, he says, blot me out of the book. All right? I'm going somewhere with this. He says, blot me out of the book. And our Elohim says, no, those that sin against me, I'm going to blot out the book. Now notice that's just the way that our Elohim works, the way he moves. He does not justify the guilty, neither does he kill the innocent. That's not what he does. Okay? And so as we continue here, which, by the way, that deals with Christianity and their false narrative and their construct of supposed salvation. So Moses asked to see, and we go down to chapter 34, Moses actually asked to see the glory of our Elohim. Now, I want you to notice something here. Verse number 5. And Yah descended in the cloud and stood with him there, because in the midst of that conversation, our Elohim was speaking with Moses, and Moses said, listen, I want you to show me your glory, right? Show me your glory. And so it led into this incident that we're now going to read. So it reads in verse 5, and Yah descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of Yah. He proclaimed the name of Yahweh. Verse 6. And Yahweh passed before him and proclaimed, Yahuwah, Yahuwah, Elohim Rahum, Ve'elohim Chesed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness. Keep going, keep going. Verse number 7, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquities and transgressions and sin. And notice what it reads, and that will by no means clear the guilty. But this is what I really want you to pay attention to. Visiting the what? The iniquity of the fathers. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children, unto the third and the fourth generation. Very powerful, very powerful. What does that have to do with Cain? What does that have to do with sin in general? What does that have to do with all of us as human beings? Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children. Wait for it. Original sin is wrong because it suggests that the children are guilty of the sins of their fathers, and they therefore deserve to be punished because of what their fathers have done. Okay? Of which the church says, well, Yeshua ben Yosef, called Jesus by the Greeks and the Romans, that he came to completely undo and to deal with the sin of our greatest forefather, Adam, because of original sin. Okay, that is a fallacy, that is a Christian construct, okay? Used to make all of mankind indebted. It is used to impoverish and to plunge in debt every individual on the face of this planet, psychologically, spiritually, and morally, and declare all of them to be sinners, all of them to be dead, all of them to be no good, undefiled, all of them to be wretches, right? So that they then might superimpose their idea of salvation and remedy, which, by the way, just so happens to be that the Catholic Church has. The Catholic Church is the one that has that answer, right? You come to us, and by the way, we will, do penance and say these many Hail Marys and blah, 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 and, And so they then have the remedy, and oh, by the way, you must pay your tithes, and you must, Um, yeah, it is a construct that is meant to impoverish humanity. Okay, but wait, let's keep going. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers. Now, there is a phenomenon which exists where the sin does not transfer from parent to child, but the potential, it's even more than the evil inclination that Judaism speaks of. I'm talking about the residue, if you will, of iniquity. Remember what iniquity is? Iniquity is attached to the the feelings of guilt, the feelings of remorse, all of that goes with sin, but yet a person overrides their own heart. The Egyptians called it eating their own heart, which is one of the negative confessions. I have not eaten my own heart, which means I've not gone against my own convictions, right? So iniquity then is where an individual knows they've done wrong, and later, past tense, they are punished by guilt. You know you shouldn't have did that. You know you shouldn't have did that, right? And so then they do like Cain, they take it personally, and then they begin to label themselves by the sin and say that they are a sinner. Well, the iniquity, if you will, of the fathers travels throughout the family. Wait a minute. I thought you said there was no such thing as original sin. There is no such thing as original sin, right? I'm not guilty for what my father did. However, since I am my father's son, he gave me the potentials to do everything that he did, okay? So therefore, I have the potential to repeat his actions. There may even be some sort of innate desire to repeat those actions, right? However, I am not guilty of any of those actions until I perform the act. But the stage is set, and it may be conducive for me to follow in that vein and do what he did, right? Because I am my father's son. But wait a minute. Notice what our Elohim said here. He said that he keeps mercy for thousands and forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin. So he does not just forgive sin. He does not just forgive transgression, but he forgives iniquity, which again is that heart element that's attached to sin, that is guilt and remorse and so forth and so on. And it's that part of our conscience that knows that we shouldn't have done it, but we did it anyway. And so he says that, you know what, I am forgiving people for those things, right? And he's visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children unto the third and the fourth generation. Now, wait a minute. Okay, I have to let the cat out of the bag. When I asked the question of whether or not Cain's issue and Cain's error was genetic, right? If it was genetic or not, and I said yes and no, here's what I have to tell you. There is something called epigenetics. And epigenetics, in fact, let me get an article or two, something that I was looking at here so that I can help you understand what epigenetics is, okay? Epigenetics is where, even before you were born, now this is going to be new for some, but this is going to be perhaps review for others. Epigenetics is where an individual is born, right? But even before they were born, there are genetic memories, there are genetic tendencies, and there are genetic connections to the actual emotions and I want to say even the genetic catalyst that has been given to the child. I used to think that when a child was born, that a child was born a clean slate. That is not true. Science is now finding out that by means of epigenetics, okay, my existence began with my grandfather and with my great grandfather, because the spiritual stuffs that they would transfer along the way would register also in me. When our Elohim said, hey, I'm visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation, that's what it means. That means that the stuff that your grandfather did and the stuff that your great grandfather did actually affected him emotionally. It affected him in his DNA. It affected him. Okay, wait, hold on. What epigenetics is, like they're saying here, some have called it toxic stress, but it's more than that, right? Because what they found out is, for instance, mothers who went through a trauma actually pass the effects of that trauma onto their children, so that their children then are in a state of perpetual reaction to the trauma that the mother had when the baby was in the womb. Let me keep going. There is an actual story, if you will. There is an actual episode. It was discovered. It was dealt with by means of therapy. But an individual, in fact, I'm going to show you the book. An individual at the same age as another member in the family, and by the way, this wasn't even the individual's father. This was a relative of the individual, and this traveled through the family, okay? Let me show you this book here. There's a book that I want you to see here. This book right here. This book, it didn't start with you, okay? And so with this book, I'm telling you, this book is serious, because in this book they relay exactly what I'm telling you right now, and they actually give us an understanding of what is going on. Let me just read to you, if you don't mind. Let me just read to you some of what this is saying here, okay? I have to make the screen bigger, but I don't know if I know how. Oh, there we go. Okay, I do know how, don't I? Okay, so let's do this. Let's look inside the book. And I would love to get all of that stuff away. However, much of this book focuses on identifying inherited family patterns, the fears, feelings, and behaviors we unknowingly, let me get my noggin out the way, that we unknowingly adopted, that keep the cycle of suffering alive from generation to generation. Now, some people have called this generational curses, right? And again, it's not a, it's kind of like that same thing with sin. It's the choices that we make, right? This book says that it deals with identifying the inherited family patterns, the inherited family fears, the inherited family feelings, and the inherited family behaviors. Epigenetics now gives us an understanding that what individuals were going through, even before Adam was considering being a father, the emotional stuff that Adam was going through was affecting his seed after them, even though he had not even had a child yet. Okay? Think about it this way, especially with women, because when a woman is born, all of the eggs that she is ever going to have, whereby she gives birth, they are present in her as a baby, as a child. Right? However undeveloped they may be, they are still there. And this means that they can be affected every day of that child's life. But wait a minute. Remember what Yah our Elohim said, from the third and the fourth generation. So then the seed that's in the infant child becomes the mother, okay? And that seed is affected, and so that seed becomes the mother of another child, Do you see how this is working? So that what the infant experienced way back when, the grandmother infant, now affects the mother and affects the seed of the mother. And so it perpetuates generation after generation. Okay? Oh, in one of the instances told in this book here, there was a gentleman who was roughly 19 years of age. At 19, at a certain time within his 19th years of living, he suddenly felt very cold, right? And then he had insomnia and could not sleep. It was related to the fact that something had happened in his family, and that carried through the family. The energy of that carried through the family. Okay? And it had to be dealt with, it had to be resolved. The emotional baggage, if you will, travels from generation to generation. That is what is being said. That is what has been proven genetically. And so in this book, it talks about why we keep suffering and things that happen, things that we carry on from generation to generation. And the thing about it is, what this book is really sharing is that it didn't start with you. Even your emotional, even your spiritual disposition, it didn't start with you. It didn't start with you at all. And yes, there are good things that can also be transferred, as well as bad things that can be transferred. But it does not start with you. You are connected to those that have gone on before you. Okay? Notice what this reads here. He says, I never set out to create a method of overcoming fear and anxiety. It all began the day I lost my vision. And he talks about losing his vision, and he had to go back and reconcile with his parents. And of course, he began seeing again. But that's something that is completely different. And I just want to say, what is proven here by means of epigenetics is that the emotions that you feel, your disposition, all of that, it is connected to 3 to 4 generations back. Okay? That what you think, what you feel, even your tendencies, even your habits, your disposition, the way that you think, your susceptibility to depression, your susceptibility to certain habits and certain patterns, even certain fears, it goes back 3 to 4 generations genetically. Okay? Because when you think about it realistically, we are biocomputers, and we store a lot of information. Okay, so wait a minute. Let's then look at this in light of Cain. If it is true, and it is true, if it is true that we carry the emotions of those that have gone on before us, then when we take a look at Adam and we understand what Adam is going through, right? Notice what it reads here. Again, we touched upon this last night, but let's go ahead and let's look at it again. When we take a look here, it says, and the Lord God formed man. We're at 2 and 7. And Yah, our Elohim, formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into him his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Verse 8. And Yah, our Elohim, planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Now, I pointed out on yesterday that when you look at Genesis 1, it is a different creation story. In that creation story, there was a man and there was a woman together. Let me go back there for just a moment. Let me go back there. Okay. Verse number 26. And Elohim said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, right? Let them have dominion. Okay, verse number 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. There was a male created and there was a female created in the first chapter of the book of Genesis. And he was created by means of being formed from the ground and our Elohim breathing into him, right? And our Elohim blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, right? That's verse number 28. Now, when we get into the second chapter of Genesis, it reads here, as I was beginning to, in verse number 4, let me just skip to verse number 5. Okay. And every plant, I'm sorry, let me just read this. Hold on, let me just read this. These are the generations, verse 4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh, our Elohim, made the earth and the heavens, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For Yah, our Elohim, had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground, but there went up a mist of the ground, right? There went up a mist of the ground there went up a mist of the ground, right? But there went up, a mist on the ground for the earth, verse number 6, and watered the whole face of the ground, verse 7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And Yah, our Elohim, planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man. So now, if you harmonize these two, and if you say that this is all one creation epic, then you've got to answer the question, well, what happened to the woman that was originally created in the first chapter, verse number 27? What happened to her? Now, some have said, some have surmised, hey, that was Lilith, that was Adam's first wife, and, she wouldn't behave, so she had to hit the road, Jack, don't come back. Yah did something with her, and there's myths about that, about Lilith. But if you hold this to be, again, one narrative, one story, you gotta say, hey, something's happened to the woman. Regardless of what happened to the woman, because again, we don't know. When you take a look at the next verses here, okay, talks about the river, talking about where the rivers go, but notice verse number 18. And Yah, or Elohim, he said, it is not good that man should be alone. Now, if we attach Genesis chapter 1 to this, we would have to ask, where did the woman go? And why is Adam now alone when he wasn't alone in Genesis 1 and 27? What happened to that? Well, let's just keep it moving here, because we don't know exactly what happened. All we know is that right now in verse number 18, Adam is alone, and Adam has issues because he is alone. Now, all of the myths aside, all of the speculation aside, all of that aside, when we look at verse number 18, this is what we know. We know that Adam had an issue, and we know that Adam had an issue because he was alone. And we know the nature of our Elohim, that he is long-suffering. And this was something that, again, had taken some time, and this was something that Adam was dealing with on a long-term basis. That is what we know, okay? That is what we know. And so with Adam then, Adam definitely was going through something here. Now, in terms of epigenetics, men are able to affect and change what they give to the birth process. They're able to affect and change that emotionally and spiritually up until the very moment that it is released. So Adam had a lot of time to be able to deal with this, and apparently when Cain was conceived, there were some other issues that were unresolved. Apparently there were some issues that were unresolved. So taking a look at this, we see in 18, Adam had issues because he was alone, and our Elohim had to do something for him. He had to do something for him because it was such a problem. All right. And in him doing something for him, he created a woman, right? This time, not from the ground, but from Adam's side. And then Adam was relieved, and Adam could be good in that area, okay? But the emotional baggage, apparently, it had yet been kept. Now, wait a minute. There's also something else that we're missing. Because if you recall that even after Adam had Eve, and they were, quote-unquote, joined together, and she conceived, even before that, they had received the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. That was traumatic for them. There are traditions which say that Adam, the first time he saw the sun going down, basically he had a conniption fit because he thought that the whole world was ending. Until he realized, hey, no, that's just how it is. But I want you to see how emotionally and spiritually vulnerable these new human beings were. And when they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, imagine the fireworks of thoughts and emotions, because that's where emotions come from. Emotions come from thoughts that become judgments. Thoughts that become judgments. A thought in your head that you judge one way or the other will emote a feeling, right? And you will get a feeling from that judgment or from that so-called truth that you recognize or that you perceive, okay? When they received the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, they weren't ready to handle that. They definitely were not ready to handle that. So then my question is, what did that do to them psychologically? What did that do to them emotionally, soulishly? What did that do to them in light of epigenetics? What did that do to their seed that would come after them? What was Adam actually entertaining that had him so down in the dumps that our Elohim had to come see about him? What was it that was affecting Adam that he was so alone, right? And in fact, let's even go here. What about when Adam ate of the fruit and felt that his wife had deceived him? Because that's what he said to our Elohim. He said, the woman that you gave me, she the one who gave me that fruit. How does that feel to him? Does he feel as if she has betrayed him? Does he feel as if, I mean, all women are bad, right? I mean, she's the only woman on the planet, right? All women are bad. All women are, I mean, Adam and Eve could have really said that, right? All men are, Anyway, just a little aside there, but how would Adam feel? How would Adam feel knowing that his wife betrayed him? And carrying all that spiritual and emotional baggage, and then you have children with all of that spiritual and emotional baggage, and you don't expect them to have problems? Come on now. Because when we listen, it is written that everything produces of its own kind. And so the kind of individual that you are when you give seed or when you conceive, you are reproducing the kind of individual that you are in that moment. If you a lion, sneak, and a cheat, then you're going to reproduce someone that also has those potentials. Okay? Now, they won't be guilty of all of that until they actually commit the sinful acts. But bottom line of it is, you set them up for the alley-oop. You set them up to be able to walk that path because you conceived in an impure state. Now, it's not original sin. They're not guilty of any sin. Right? However, the stage is set so that now you've transferred to them a knowledge of that reality without them ever experiencing it. And so with that being the case, then you take a look at it and you say to yourself, well, every seed that Chava had was in her. When she bit the apple, when she was deceived, when she received the flood of information and knew things that she was not ready to handle, all of that took its toll on her. And the same thing happened to Adam. And then these two shipwrecks come together and they have a child. And guess what? There's issues in the family. No wonder there's issues in the family. There's no question about there being issues in the family, right? So then in light of epigenetics, Cain, it is almost impossible for Cain to not have had problems. Okay? With everything that had transpired, there would have been problems, right? But I will say this, Cain, regardless of the potential that was in him to do good or bad, he was yet the recipient of a conversation with our Elohim, whereby our Elohim could have a conversation with him, be there in his presence, right? So he must not have been too bad, but he definitely was overcome with something. And he definitely was not evil demon seed. All right. So then, taking a look at this, epigenetics demands that we begin to process the stuff that we deal with, that we begin to process the issues, and I'm talking about the feelings and the emotions and the dark overtones of our own reality that we don't like to look at. I'm talking about us needing to process our own mess, our own stuff, our own hidden demons, if you will, our own darkness, our own habits, our own patterns. As Hebrews, we must deal with, and we must master that is within us. We must master and take care of and be good stewards of the breath that our Elohim has given unto us. We must maintain. Okay? Which means you don't let issues ride. You deal with the issues. Okay? You talk them out. You deal with them. If you have a dream that you don't understand, you ask our Elohim for an interpretation, or allow someone that knows or that can figure out the interpretation of your dream. Pray and let our Elohim bring someone across your path. Speak with the prophet. Speak with someone who is anointed to deal with those areas, and begin to do the work, do the hard work. And the one thing about this, because I understand what our Elohim was trying to do when he spoke with Cain, in Genesis 4 and 7, he wanted things out in the open, because the way that things operate is once you get them out in the open, once you deal with your shadow characters, once you deal with those dark hidden things, once you expose them and bring them into the light, you weaken them and you weaken their power, right? It's necessary for us to address things that our forefathers did not address. It's necessary for us to deal. You see, this is why Daniel is praying in the book of Daniel, and he is confessing. He's confessing the sins of the fathers, because he understands that the iniquity, the ability to proceed with that same makeup and do those same actions, it was given us by our foreparents. Now, we ourselves may not have sinned that sin. We're not guilty of that sin until we commit it, right? So the issue of it is, Daniel says, forgive us for the sins of our fathers. Forgive our fathers, and he addresses the sins of the fathers as if it is still connected with him, and this moves our Elohim. And when you pray that way, and when you consider that you are yet connected to all of your ancestors, right? And when you stand in the now, in the present, and you pray and ask forgiveness for the iniquity and the sins of the fathers, you are addressing such a strong and powerful reality in your life that stretches all the way back 3 and 4 generations. Okay? My son, my son had a conversation with me, I believe it was either yesterday or the day before. Because when he was growing up, I knew it. I said to him, you're going to have a son just like you. And I told him, when it happens, I am going to laugh. Because I said, you're going to see what it's like to deal with you. And now that has happened, well, I'm not laughing. If I did it, it would be spiteful and vengeful, and I'm not going to do that. I love my grandson, right? But it is something to see. It is something to see. It really is. But one of the things I wanted to share one of the things that I did share with my son is that the need to conquer whatever negativity is in you is very valuable. Okay, it is very valuable, because what you produced in a son that has those same potentials, you can now go to your son with what you use to conquer that very element within you that you also gave to him. You can use that strategy to help him conquer the same thing in him. But you have to have victory over it first. Okay? And I shared this with him because, and just like me, the stuff, and in fact, I went to all my children and I apologized to them. I said, I apologize because I know some of y'all messed up. I know you got issues. I know, I know you got problems. I know. Because I gave you quite a few of those, right? I was young, married young, didn't know what I was doing, but I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, but I felt like I knew, and I was just, yeah. And so I wonder why my son was strong-headed and bull-headed and didn't want to listen to anyone. I gave that to my son, and I gave that to my grandson. Okay, and which brings a point in that I actually too. I am a key instrument in the healing of my grandchildren and my children. Um, Man, I'm still dealing with some of the things that my mother gave me, which consequently I gave to my children, right? There's some things I'm still scratching my head on, right? However, Yah is here to help us because he is visiting these areas, and he visits these areas within our time, within our generation. Know for a fact that there is some time in your life where Yah or Elohim has visited your situation and has visited the very issue that you may be hung up about, or an issue that you just may have an issue with. He has visited. Okay. So when you take a look at Cain, it's deeper than what we might imagine. The issue with Cain is far deeper than what we might imagine. Okay. And on that note, we've got to do the work. We've got to, first of all, not be so quick to judge each other for the wrongs that we think have been done. I've often said, when I look at a person with an issue, a person that made a mistake, I used to say to myself, if I had their upbringing and I was thinking the way that they were thinking in that moment, I probably would have done the same thing, right? So it's important for us to have some empathy and understand that people, 9 times out of 10, people are really trying to do the best that they can. It's just that the best that they can do may be something that's inconvenient and wrong and something that should not be done. But that's what they know to do, or that's what they're used to doing. And so we need to not be judgmental, but we need to be empathetic. That's one of my points. Okay? And another point is, again, I'll say it again, that we need to do the work. And don't, and that means not letting anything, stop hiding things under the rug, stop sweeping things under the rug, and own your emotions, own what you feel. Stand flat-footedly and say, this is really how I feel about this issue. Because listen, you really, no matter what you're feeling, you have a right to feel that way about what you're feeling. Based upon what's going on in your head, you're thinking about it, you have every right to feel whatever emotion you're feeling. Now, whether that feeling is justified depends upon how much what you're thinking lines up with reality, lines up with the truth. Okay? With that in mind, I'm simply saying we need to do the work. I know I sound like Ayanla right now, but hey, The point of it is we have work to do. And I wanted to mention this. I wanted to go through this because we're talking about the healing of the family. This is what I am after. The healing, the deep healing of the Hebrew family, the deep healing of the relationships between the fathers and the sons, and the daughters and the mothers, and everyone together. That is what I'm addressing. The need for healing in the Hebrew family, where we listen, where we are whole and complete, right? Where we are fully and completely capable of dealing with our own issues, even to the point of having our own venues for counseling, okay? Which is why I'm going to bring this up. Because we have just such a thing. We do. And it is called, it's at hebraicliving.com, but it's Hebraic Business and Life Coaching. Okay? You want to talk some things out, you want to deal with some things, you may need a counselor, you may need a coach, you may need someone to look at your issue from a Hebrew perspective. That's what this is. Hebraic Living, the Institute itself, the Hebraic Institute, it is for addressing issues from a Hebrew perspective, from coaching in business from a Hebrew perspective, as well as trying to live life, trying to develop relationships, have healthy relationships. That is what it is about. Okay? It is important for us to do the work, and we need to do the work. On this particular site, I know I've shown this to some of you before, but long story short, with this comes a kind of coaching that we have pioneered. It's called alphabet coaching actually. And it's where we actually look at whatever situation you have, but we look at it in light of the energy that our Elohim has placed on our lives that we're interacting with, okay? And we do that through the Hebrew alphabet. But that is optional. You don't listen. There's life coaching and business coaching for just about every area of life that you can imagine. But the alphabet coaching is an addition to that, okay? But there's relationship coaching, right? There's relationship between spouses, relationship between parent and child. There's business coaching, okay? And so we want you to know that there is an outlet whereby individuals can be helped and counseled and deal with issues from a Hebraic perspective, okay? Many of the tools, many of the instruments out there are Christian-oriented, okay? Some of you may recall what nouthetic counseling is, right? Well, many of these are Christian in origin, and so they have a Christian foundation. We need something that is for us, right? We need something that is just for us. And I'm talking about coaching, I'm talking about counseling from a Hebraic perspective. So, hey, I've been on quite a while, and I just want to go ahead and, I just want to go ahead and I've been on for quite a while. I've been on well over an hour, and so I'm just going to go ahead. I think I'm good for right now. Yah willing, we will come back, and we will deal with perhaps a completely new subject on tomorrow. Yah willing. Yah willing. So be here, and we will once again have a good time. Peace and blessings to you, and